I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that there's this weird martyr syndrome going throughout the comic book industry this week, especially on social media, called comic books broke me or something like that. It's a hashtag, and there are literally like hundreds, like multiple hundreds of people talking about the comic book industry and how it broke them and broke their spirit and they'll never be better. They've got post-traumatic stress disorder and all this crazy stuff. And there are a couple stories there that I did see that I will say I'm very sympathetic towards. You know, sometimes things happen that are outside of your control. And when your business partner doesn't really support you in that, or maybe even holds it against you, maybe like a child was sick, that's absolute bullshit. But the vast majority of these people speaking out about how comic books broke them, like, am I supposed to feel bad for you because you're an idiot? Because you're stupid? Because you're not a business person? Because someone mistreated you and you kept going back and back and back? Like, you're a grown person. These are all adults. And as adults, we make decisions which in turn affect the way our lives play out in real time. None of these people that I'm going to talk about today, and I've got 5 examples, most of them you won't know who they are. One of them you definitely will. No one ever held a gun to any of their heads and said, you have no choice but to be an artist in comic books. You have no choice but to be an editor in comic books. You have no choice. You have to be a comic book writer. You have to be a comic book colorist or any of this stuff. This is the vocation that you chose. Obviously, you know people in comic books that have worked with all these companies and you've seen that they've been screwed over, and then you decided to work for them yourselves. What did you think was going to happen, numbnuts? Like, fucking grow up. You are not a martyr. Comic books did not break you. You broke yourself by being an idiot. There's so many examples. It was actually difficult to parse it down to 5. These are the 5 I'm going to talk about just because they're just so stupid. That's the only way that I can describe them. You're going to love this stuff. First up, we have Chris Benoglio. He says, Stan Lee Kids Media offered me $0 for all rights to my self-published book, Weird Kids. Their contract also stipulated that I might be asked to do promo art and make changes to the book for free. They also denied my request for first right of refusal to create any potential sequels of my own book. Did you see that last part? They denied his request for first right of refusal. That means Chris Benoglio actually negotiated with a company that offered him $0 for the work he had already done. That means you were willing to accept it, numbnuts. What are you thinking? You actually went out there, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into a comic book, and you were going to give it away for free? Why would they negotiate with you if you've already established that you're willing to give the work away for free? You can't blame that on comic books. You actually went back to them after they gave you the worst deal possible in the history of the world for any type of commercial services whatsoever. They wanted to give you nothing for the work that you had already completed. Well, can I do a sequel? I want a chance to do this. As soon as someone says, I'm going to pay you nothing for what you've done, you tell them to get the fuck out because you actually have some balls. That bad experience is 100% on you because as soon as they offered you that, you say no and move on to the next potential business venture that you have. The next one I have is from Heather Antonos. Most of you will know who she is. She's the group editor for IDW's licensed comics now. It's why a lot of folks do work in video games versus comics. I once edited a 10-page comic for Destiny and got paid $5,000. Literally 1/6 of what Marvel paid me for a year while I worked on Star Wars and Deadpool for 10 pages of work. Thank you very much for confirming that you only made $30,000 a year when you were working for Marvel while living in New York City, which is absolutely insane that anyone would sign up for that. But hey, that was your deal. You signed the contract or whatever. But you got a taste of business outside of comic books, working with a video game company, and they literally paid you 1/6 of your entire salary for just like 10 pages of temp work. Why are you still in comic books? You obviously know that there are better opportunities out there. Why weren't you putting your best foot forward so Destiny might hire you, I don't know, full time or somebody associated with them? Why are you not doing everything in your power to not work for comic books and go work for Destiny? We both know IDW is about to go out of business. You're not going to have a job for very long. Find out the requirements that Destiny want their employees to have and write your resume around that and hope that they hire you. You literally know that they pay more money, yet you chose to stay in comic books. Even after Marvel fired you, I'm not feeling bad for you. You're the fucking moron that knew that there were better opportunities to make more money for the same amount of work Yet you chose to come back here to what? Own the chuds? Did you literally leave such a bad impression at Destiny that no one in video games will ever hire you? Of course there are a lot of comic book people working in video games. Almost everyone really talented did that, especially the artists. Look at Eric Cadetti. Look at Joe Mad. Look at all the people that left comic books because the pay and compensation is so much better in video games. This isn't headline news. You aren't breaking anything here, pal. Everyone knew that already, except you were the only one dumb enough to actually come back to comic books and then say comic books broke you. You broke yourself. You should be working at IDW. You should be working at Destiny or some company like that. This is what Mayday Tripp had to say, and this was a very long set of tweets. This is the most egregious, dumbest thing that this digital artist actually had to say and how comic books broke him. He said, Jeff Johns had loved my work and told me to move to LA and he'd get me drawing Superboy backups digitally. I took a leap of faith, moved my wife and son to LA and got a day job. Jeff Johns took me to lunch and told me it was weird I had taken him literally. He had introduced me to Dan Didio at a party months earlier as one of the 5 working writers who understand Superman. That move irreparably harmed my young family, my burgeoning career, and my worsening mental and physical health. I'm sorry, it appears that Jeff Johns was being polite. Apparently, these people are so fucking dense and stupid, you can't even be polite to them anymore because they will take you literally. What is he, like the fucking Drax off of the MCU? They don't understand analogies. They don't understand politeness. He was just playing you a compliment and being nice to you during an introduction to somebody of some stature and importance at that time, likely in comic books, when he introduced you to Dan Didio and paid you a compliment about your knowledge of Superman. And he said, you know what? Hey, man, if only you were in LA, man, I'd have you doing backup Superman digital comics, man. You'd be great stuff, man. It's just too bad that you're living where you are now. People say stuff like that. You don't just grab your wife and kid and move them and say, well, all my physical and mental health issues, really, it's Jeff Johns and DC Comics' fault because he paid you a compliment in passing and was trying to be nice to you. Did you ever call him up and be like, hey, man, were you serious about that opportunity? Because it's kind of like my lifelong dream. Maybe I would like to jump at that if you were serious. You never followed up, and then it's his fault. Once you have a wife and kids, you have responsibilities. You don't just get to pack up and move yourself without a job lined up when you have those kind of responsibilities lined up. It's one thing for young Josh McDonald living in Texas as a teenager decided to move to LA with almost no money because he dreams of being a screenwriter or whatever. You had a wife and kids and apparently had done some work in the industry already. And you're a fucking digital artist. Why would you need to be in the city of the publisher to do digital art? You could just email him the work. If he wanted to hire you, he would have hired you, man. Stop acting like a kid. Grow up, Peter Pan. That is not comic books' fault. You're a fucking idiot. You shouldn't do that to your family. This is what Casey Nowak said. She said, I drew Lumberjanes 9 through 11 for $80 a page. One of the most miserable experiences of my entire life. I took up cigarettes. I kicked a hole in a cabinet door. I woke up stressed out and went to bed stressed out. I hated what I had made. I was embarrassed. And I went crawling back multiple times. I think I got them to give me $9 a page at some point. I'm talking layout, pencils, and inks, all on Lumberjanes. I guess I believed in the comic book. You sign a contract for $80 a page to do layouts, pencils, and inks. And you got paid. Apparently, there's no complaints about not getting paid on time. This artist got paid on time. But it's comic book's fault that you went crawling back multiple times begging for a couple more crumbs for fucking Lumberjanes of all comic books. It's not Batman. This isn't your big break on Spider-Man or X-Men or anything like this. It's fucking Lumberjanes, a comic book that, in 2 minutes, no one's even going to remember ever was made. Sure, it had like a little blip of positivity around it, but it wasn't a good series, and it certainly wasn't going to be anything that was going to be remembered, in the annals of history when it comes to comic books. It's not even going to be a cartoon or anything like that because it's a stupid concept. Why were you wasting your time on a dumbass comic book like Lumberjanes? That's your own fault. It's your fault that you started smoking cigarettes. It's your fault that you kicked the goddamn hole in the door. It's not comic book's fault that you took a stupid job and then begged for more. We're all responsible to our own decisions. You made a terrible decision and compounded it by making an even more terrible decision, asking for more work that you actually hated and was stressing you out. You should feel embarrassed that you did it in the first place, and then you actually went back and asked for more. This is the last set of tweets I'll talk about. This is what Triona Tree Farrell said. You know what's a fun fact for colorists? A certain huge company lowered their starting rates for colorists from $120 to $90 recently. I get paid less than nearly all my peers because I started later. Another familiar large company had their rate at $100 in 2008, and it's now $80. Obviously, that's 15 years later. There is literally no way to raise this rate according to the company. And herein lies the problem with all this, the reason that you're all monumentally screwed over. Yes, you made a lot of bad decisions, but along the way, you also decided to alienate the entire comic book reading audience and force them to go and read manga, which it turns out right now is a much better product for people wanting to consume funny books on the regular. You made them walk away. You made comic books hostile. You said you were the wrong audience. We don't want your money. There's a better audience out there that we would like to court. So we're going to write stories that no one actually wants to read. We're going to take the characters everyone likes and we're going to destroy them whole cloth as many times as absolutely possible and drive people away in droves. You want to know why you make less money today than you did even 15 years ago? Because they don't sell enough comic books anymore. Over the course of those 15 years, inflation still happens. The materials still go up in price. It costs more money to actually publish a comic book. They're not selling as many comic books today as they were then because you guys drove them all off. You created your own personal living hell where you're all stressed out. You all have mental and physical ailments because of the environment that you helped create when you drove everyone away. They can't exactly start paying less for paper because they'll just sell the paper to somebody else. Where are they going to take the money away from to actually keep the price low enough that it's somewhat reasonable for some people to still actually pay for the comic books? They're going to take it away from the creators. You guys have created this enormous void. They can't sell enough comic books to actually justify their existence anymore. That's why you're getting paid like dirt. That's why a lot of these publishers are going out of business and not paying people possibly at all in a lot of cases. You guys played yourself. No one ever said you cannot leave the comic book industry. You could not take your trade, you cannot take your skills and apply them in another commercial venture. No one ever told you you had to quit your day job and be a full-time comic book pro. Almost all the comic pros that I know that are doing well have other jobs where they make their real money because there just isn't money right now in comic books. And a lot of the people bitching about this are a lot of the reasons that this is happening right now. In fact, I talked about this somewhat recently, how comic books, they like to complain about all this stuff, but they marginalized themselves. They played themselves and they made themselves completely unnecessary to the comic book buying audience by and large. If you haven't seen this video, you need to check it out right now. There's also a link in the video description.